Welcome back to True Infidelity Tales, a place where you may find heartwarming and captivating stories. The tale of Dylan, a single father who has experienced the unimaginable with his twin kids, will be told today. Dylan is my name. I have a great hole in my heart that I can't fill because my wife died giving birth to our two girls. Since then, I've been the mother and father of Violet and Scarlett, two kids who are so similar that I occasionally find it difficult to tell them apart. The eldest daughter, Violet, is consistently composed and considerate. The younger, Scarlett, is constantly vivacious and expressive. Even though life hasn't been easy, I feel like I have a reason to keep going since I'm watching my two kids grow up every day. Despite their mother's lack of emotional support, I have done everything in my power to provide them with a happy childhood. I merely wanted to see my kids grow up to be decent, content adults throughout those years. Even though Violet and Scarlett are 20 years old, attractive, intelligent, and bright young women, I never thought they would decide to reward me in a way that was so out of the ordinary. Instead of going home at dusk like every other day, it was an odd afternoon. The work for today was somewhat altered. I was relieved to be able to leave work earlier than normal because I didn't often get to go home early. I hurried home, looking forward to unwinding during this infrequent calm moment. Upon arriving at the gate, I discovered that the entrance was only slightly open, which is not often the case. My heart grew a little tighter. A vague hunch began to creep into my mind. After a brief moment of hesitation, I softly pushed the door open and went inside. I instantly stopped when I heard laughter coming from the living room as soon as the door opened. I didn't recognize such sounds as my daughters talking to friends or watching a movie. It was an odd voice, the voice of a man. Feeling uneasy and my heart beginning to increase, I stood motionless and tried to listen more. That voice, along with Violet's chuckles, made my pulse race in a troubled and perplexed way. With each step, my legs felt heavy as I made my way slowly towards the living room. The noises became increasingly distinct. I couldn't stop because I was curious and uneasy. I arrived at the door and was suddenly taken aback by what I saw inside. There was Violet, the little child I had always adored, naked, with her sister and an odd young man. None of the three appeared to be aware of their surroundings, as if they were lost in their own universe. I froze, my entire being frozen in shock before exploding into violent rage. "What is this?" My voice was so loud that it broke the air in the room as I yelled. They all three snapped out of their reverie at once. Under my glaring eyes, the young man struggled to gather up the strewn-about clothing, his hands shaking as though he was unsure of what to do. Violet remained still, her face pallid, her eyes wide, her lips twitching as though she wanted to speak, but she didn't. The older sister was no different. She just stood there, trembling all over and attempting to hide herself with the sofa pillow. Violet said, "Dad, Dad," in a feeble voice. "What are you all up to?" I yelled, clutching the armrests of the chair next to me as I tried to control my growing rage. With her palms extended as though pleading for mercy, Violet hurried forward. "I didn't want to listen, but I begged you, Dad, to relax and let me explain." When confronted with such a vile scene, how could I listen? Every value and principle I had worked so hard to instill over the years seemed to go in that instant. I looked at the young man. I yelled, "Get out of here now!" as my voice tore through the thick atmosphere. He approached with timidity, hurriedly putting on his clothing, bowed his head, and muttered a few excuses. He was about to jump over and grasp his neck to discipline him when he was just a few feet away from me and was unable to contain himself any longer. Violet, however, was quicker and hurried ahead of me. "It's my fault, so please don't make a fuss." "Dad, let him go," Violet begged, tears choking her voice. In an attempt to stop me, my oldest daughter also hurried over and gave me an arm hug. "Don't do this, Dad," but we were mistaken. Breathing deeply, I paused, my gaze still focused on the young man tiptoeing to the door. Before he fled, he gave me one more look as his legs were shaking. The room fell into a suffocating silence as the door closed with a tiny sound. With my heart still filled with rage, I turned back to face my two girls. However, I abruptly halted when I saw Violet's sad red eyes. How could I strike or reprimand them now? Now, the two girls I cherished beyond all else were clutching me, shaky and terrified, powerless to help. I ran upstairs, leaving them both behind. With my back against the door, I slammed it shut, the sound resonating dryly in the now silent home. My entire body was worn out as I stood there, but my thoughts would not stop racing. My breathing accelerated, and I had the impression that I was being ensnared in a tornado, where there was no way out of the chaos. They are both of my cherished daughters. I vowed to protect them, nurture them well, and allow them to lead fulfilling lives as soon as I first held them in my arms. But what had just transpired before my eyes seemed like a slap in the face. I could no longer exercise the authority I believed I had always had as a father, because they were no longer the naive kids I had known. When had I become so far away from them that I had failed to notice these changes and what had gone wrong? I pictured Violet's crimson eyes and her quivering voice pleading for my pardon. It was painful, because as a father, I never imagined that I would find myself in this predicament. I still harbored resentment, but not only toward them. I felt upset with myself, because I couldn't have prevented this from happening. The questions continued to float. Why did they decide to do it in the house, in the center of the living room, which had long served as the focal point of family gatherings? Why didn't they consider my feelings as the one who had raised children my entire life and upheld the principles I had always held dear? I tried to comprehend, but the more I considered it, the more perplexed and trapped I felt. I put my head in my hands and sat on the edge of the bed. My eyes filled with tears, but I made an effort to contain them. Would crime make a difference? Being a father required me to be strong, but since I'm only human, I don't feel like I'm strong enough to handle this at the moment. When I saw them again, I wasn't sure what to say or do. Get scolded? Punish? I was quite justified in doing so, but would it improve the situation, or would it only drive them farther apart? Something popped into my head. Not now, but I needed to talk. I needed time to process what had happened, not just to calm down. I got up and went to the closet to find a fresh shirt. My mind was chilled, but my body was still soaked in perspiration. I needed to get away from those eerie pictures and find somewhere to relax. Everything about this house and this room was choking me. With every step I took down the stairs, my heart felt as heavy as if I were toting a mountain. I stopped when I heard Violet and her sister's muted tears coming from downstairs. Suddenly, all of my fury left me and was replaced by an unfathomable weight. Despite my anger, I realized that I was the one person who could help them clear their confusion, but not right now. In order to avoid having to confront them while my rage was still raw, I needed time and distance to collect myself. I was shocked to discover that my girls had changed as I made my way to the living room. I wasn't in the mood to notice that they were wearing flimsy pajamas that showed their unease. I couldn't concentrate on little details since my head was racing with ideas. Violet rushed over as soon as she saw me walk in, took my hand, and gently drew me in. She added, her voice quivering a little, "Come on, Dad, we have something to tell you." I attempted to shove Violet's hand away, but I was unable to do so because of the terrified, teary expression in her eyes. They were my daughters. When I saw that look, how could I have been strong? I struggled a while before following Violet and taking a seat on an adjacent chair. I remained silent and awaited their explanation. I could only wait for them to speak without saying anything. Violet took a seat beside me, her gaze remaining on me as though she thought I may get up and go. Despite having a worried expression on her face, her sister sat across from her and dared not look directly at me. Only my gentle breathing and my two daughters' sighs could be heard during the extended silence. Violet finally spoke, albeit her voice was a little shaky. "I apologize, Dad. I realize I was mistaken and I can't defend it, but I didn't anticipate things would get this bad or that you would return so quickly." Her sister also spoke, regretting everything in a stifled voice. "We didn't intend to do that, but at the time, we simply didn't know what to do." "I apologize as well, Dad. Violet took hold of my hand while still stuttering, her eyes watering. "I'm really sorry, Dad." I'm at a loss for words to express my sincere apologies. I gazed at them with sadness in my heart. I knew they were sincere in their apologies, but they were insufficient to ease my rage. Perhaps, though, this remorse was insufficient to make everything better. I sat in silence, feeling a range of feelings. Violet was staring at me with sorrow and terror in her eyes, which were still wet. Her sister was no better, staring at me as though she was afraid to look at me. Despite their sincerity, those apologies were unable to ease my emotional turmoil. I couldn't ignore what had happened, but I couldn't deny that they were sincerely sorry. For a long time, the only sound in the quiet room was heavy breathing. My body began to tremble, and I experienced an unfathomable sensation of suffocating. I exhaled abruptly and added quietly, "I know you're very disappointed and angry, but what happened is what happened, cannot be undone." Violet quickly took hold of my hand, her eyes beseeching. "I'm at a loss for what to do, Dad." I felt a great deal of regret. Her sister bowed her head as well. She stutteringly spoke. "We only wanted to give it a shot, but we had no idea how far things would go. Anger or reprimands wouldn't help just now. Yet it hurt like tearing my heart pieces. Sometimes I need time so that I can both feel their grief and help them understand what they did." Upon gazing at my two daughters, whom I adore without conditions, an odd, cozy sensation sprang within me. I can't keep feeling angry forever. As their father, I cannot allow my rage to ruin our connection under any circumstances. Even though the three of us could feel the weight in the air, I drew them into my arms and gave them a tight hug. I remained silent and simply gave them a deep embrace, allowing the sense of calm to return, if only briefly. At last I spoke in a quiet, low voice. "I will not desert you, but I am not sure how to stop this from happening. All right, let's work this out together." Violet gave a small nod, and her sister quickly did the same. There was a calm ease in the air. Even if we weren't in a good mood, the three of us at least had a location to start. It was difficult for me to put into words how I felt, divided between intense love and rage for my two girls, but the disappointment was still there. All of those emotions appeared to fade when I held them, and in their place came another emotion, one that was both terrible and sympathetic. Since they were still my children, I couldn't be furious with them indefinitely. Violet and her sister were still sitting there when I released them, their faces filled with worry and their eyes red. As though they were awaiting my final choice, they dared not look at me. After biting her lip, her sister turned to face me. She stutteringly spoke. "I know I made a mistake, Dad. I swear I won't do it again, but I can't forgive myself. Are you able to believe me?" My eyes were sad and exhausted as I gazed at them. Only my two girls and I remained as everything else appeared to go away. I came to the realization that I couldn't continue to live in the past or let my anger to rule me indefinitely. We all make mistakes, but what matters is how we learn from them and go on. I drew them in, and this time it wasn't simply a hug. It was a firm one, free of hatred and anger. I replied, "I won't abandon you." I stuttered, although I'm not sure how to return things to as they were. I am certain that we can overcome this if we band together. With hopeful eyes, Violet and her sister nodded. For a long period, the three of them just sat there together without saying anything. I got up and went to the window because there seemed to be a peculiar sensation of calm in the air, as if everything might start over even if it had changed. The sunset outside was beginning to fade into the stillness of the night. Everything was still not entirely settled in my heart, but at least today I was able to get over my anger, and maybe that was what mattered most. I could choose how to deal with the future, but I couldn't alter the past. I turned to face them and repeated, "I love you," and this time, the pain was gone. All that existed was love, love as solid and enduring as a father's love for his children. The room's atmosphere slowly returned to normal after that brief period of silence, but it was too soon to declare that it had healed. I'm not sure when my wrath fully subsided, but for the time being at least, I don't feel the piercing anguish in my heart whenever I gaze at my two girls. We sat there for a long without saying anything, but I sensed a weird bond with my daughters. One that was forged through hugs, forgiveness, and the understanding that we both needed one another, rather than through promises or excuses. I got up and went to my room after that. The weight was lifted, but there were still a lot of unsolved questions in my heart. Regardless, we had survived a significant storm, and I was confident that we would keep going. My family would remain a family in spite of the difficulties. Everything appeared to be back to normal the following day. The house remained warm. During breakfast, the children's laughter reverberated. In my heart, however, I discovered something significant. I came to see that patience and understanding are the most crucial qualities in a family. Errors occasionally occur to test our patience and love, not to end the partnership. We all make errors, whether we are parents or kids, but what matters is that we can grow from them and improve. Although it's difficult, forgiveness is essential to the family's strength. Don't allow rage to blind you and prevent you from loving and supporting one another. Be able to share and listen. Avoid letting your anger control you, especially when it involves family members. Sometimes all scars can be healed with a simple embrace and a kind word. Remember that the most valuable thing is family love, and we must never give up on this path.